The following opinions given in this podcast are those of the individuals and do not represent in any way opinions of any companies or organisations mentioned in this interview. Welcome to Past Quirks, where I shall be interviewing professional performer Jenni Simmonds. So hello there, I am joined today by the wonderful Jenni Simmonds. How are you?
Hello Tom, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on here. This is fun.
So I hear that you do sort of acting and everything, and you're sort of an actor.
Yeah, I guess that, yeah. Oh, I'm going to steal that. Sort of an actor to put on my...
Okay. Well, I know.
Yeah,
I've read from your resume that obviously you've done sort of acting before, and you've worked a lot in heritage. When and what made you want to sort of get into that?
When I think it was acting that came first, because I'd started off as a dancer when I was very young, and then took acting classes and singing classes. I ended up training in musical theatre at the Guildford School of Acting. And as we all know, very competitive industry. When I graduated, didn't have much luck getting some work. I thought, what can I do? What is another love of mine? And by then I was really, really into history. So I went and particularly how we can interpret history, how we can sort of make it relevant to today. So I did another degree in heritage studies at Bishop Grosseteste University in Lincoln, affectionately known as Bishop Grot. That got my first class honours in that, which was a huge surprise. And then thought, wouldn't it be great if I could one day marry the two together, history and drama, history and performing. And actually, funnily enough, that's kind of what I've ended up doing for the past.
So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the past 3 jobs I've had, I've been very lucky to be able to combine sort of historic knowledge with how we interpret that, and then also acting as well.
Oh, fantastic. So you mentioned obviously a lot of that interest stemming from childhood, you wanting to perform, and then obviously getting into history. Did you have any sort of inspirations back then? Any, say, favourite actors or favourite, I don't know, playwrights or favourite historians, anyone like that? And if so, how it kind of had an impact, I suppose, really?
I think from the acting perspective, as a child, my first memory, I think I must have been about 3 or 4, is being sat in the audience of a dress rehearsal of an amateur production of Hudde. So it was sort of in my blood. My grandfather was a really talented singer, and even when he was an old man, he could make the house shake. So
Wow.
I really did grow up with it, and actually Gilbert and Sullivan is still a huge part of my life. And then later, I suppose, when I got older, I started reading historical fiction, particularly Philippa Gregory, and then I became more interested in the factual books. So Alison Weir's biographies, particularly of the Tudor court, I devoured them, and yeah, just generally grew from there, really.
Okay, so how would you sort of describe your work sort of situation, the sort of work you do, and do you have any advice for anyone looking to get into sort of the same thing that you do?
I accidentally once called myself a strolling minstrel, and I think that kind of sums it up pretty well. Security may not always be the best in this industry, but when you have the work, it's so fun and it's so creative, and it's building as a character as well, and you're on to your skills. I would say, for me, if I could talk to myself 10 years ago and I was really fed up, put in all this work in training, you've got nothing to show for it, go on and get a proper job, I would say, yeah, sure, do that, but make sure it keeps ticking over to anything that keeps that alive. And that amazingly can open so many doors. I'm speaking personally, this might sound a bit preachy, but for me, it was all about people that I happened to meet through amateur groups that knew someone in a professional group that then offered me an audition, etc., etc., etc. And it kind of snowballed from there. So keep those connections up, join new societies, And yeah, just keep it alive and keep hopeful, and be patient. I had to be so patient, and I'm a really impatient person.
Because you've been, am I right in thinking you've been involved in bits like you've been involved in sort of historic feasts and things like that from what I've seen. I mean, how was all of that? Was that, I bet that was great fun.
Yeah, the last job I did for a year actually, Anne Boleyn, at the Medieval Banquet. It was a really fun job. It was a really weird mix, being dressed as Anne Boleyn in costumes that got increasingly more theatrical, having to walk around in character, speaking to the audience, making sure you knew all your historical knowledge, particularly about Anne Boleyn, but also being able to sing like in Middle English, in medieval Spanish, in medieval French, etc. So I could go on. Yeah, it was tough, but really interesting and fun.
Oh wow, that does sound good. Because I remember actually, I think I went to a medieval banquet years ago. Out of interest, have you met any famous singers or actors or historians, authors, anyone like that? Any famous encounters that have been quite interesting?
Yeah, quite a few. I've been quite lucky. When I'm obviously when I was a kid, we're not talking recently because they were a while ago, and I did the Harry Potter films, and I met all pretty much the creme de la creme of British acting talent at the time. So I won't bore you with that, but the list of people in those films are incredible, and to meet them all when you're 15 I was very lucky. I think my favourite weirdest encounter was when I met Stephen Fry, and I was too scared to sort of say excuse me to him to get him to move out of my way, and he was so tall and I'm short. I was able to just walk under his arm, and he turned around and he went, "Oh, look at this little sprite." And I've always taken that, and that's like my little tagline for my new website. I think I'm going to use that as the quote. In terms of historians, I used to work at Hever Castle, but I ended up doing loads of jobs, including, funnily enough, being dressed as Anne Boleyn again. But I met quite a few historians there that came through the doors for research purposes. That was really interesting, a really great place to work. I learned so much there. Lucy Worsley, meeting her, because I just think her programs are just that right mix of sort of entertaining and factual. She's really great. Meeting her was a privilege, yeah.
So I'm guessing then favourite time periods would definitely be Tudor, would be one of them. Do you have any other ones as well, or?
Yeah, Tudors are obviously up there. I feel a bit, they're getting a bit of a bad rep at the moment. Everyone's like, oh, well, everyone loves the Tudors. You know what? You're not very original. Blah blah blah. There's a reason they're so popular. The people that were alive then, and the people that we learn about, and the stories and the factions and all of that really is gripping. It's insane. In terms of sort of just how that period is portrayed, I really like the sort of like Waterloo era, kind of early 19th century, the Regency into and then into early Victorian. Just I really love the aesthetic of that period and how the upper classes of society are portrayed. You wouldn't want to be slumming it in those times.
Oh no, you don't want to be slumming it any time, really, do you?
Yeah, no. So I fairly recently discovered a love for the Wars of the Roses. I'm still like York, Lancaster, I don't know.
Have you ever been to York out of interest? They've got two different exhibitions on the wall where you can actually go and hear the Yorkist story and then the Lancastrian story.
I spent quite a lot of time in York. It's such a beautiful place. I've not seen that. When was that exhibition put up? I
think it was a few years ago. It was in the last 5 years, definitely.
Oh,
There's
okay.
a Henry VII bit and a Richard III bit, but there are different parts of the wall, and you obviously walk around, between them. So there's some really interesting stuff there. So do you have any favourite sort of historic locations in the UK then?
Well, Hever has to be up there because I spent so much. I worked there on and off for 4 or 5 years. So that really does have to be up there, just for a personal attachment. I can't really name individual places. I kind of go to them and get a feel for the place and then tend to find out what happened there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, a bit like a murder mystery almost.
Yeah, if I find somewhere that I find interesting and then it turns out that, I don't know, my family lived there for 200 years, that happened. That was fun. I'm a big fan of genealogy. I do a lot of family tree stuff. So that's why I was up in Yorkshire doing a lot of driving around the little villages where my family are buried and lived and things.
Because it brings it to life, doesn't it? It adds that personal element to it in a way.
It really does. And this is why I love doing all of this. I wouldn't call myself a historical interpreter, but I would say I'm, in terms of like when I am a historical character, I genuinely try my absolute hardest to be as accurate as I can be. Getting that personal touch across helps both my acting and also people learn about history. So.
Oh, absolutely. That's what people cotton on to, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you could spend a day then with anyone from history, who would it be and why?
That's a really tough question. I mean, my obvious answer would be Anne Boleyn, because I want to know if I've been doing her justice. You know, a lot of children that I meet genuinely think, you know, I'm about to have my head chopped off, and they're genuinely very concerned about my well-being. I just want to know if she's such a fascinating person. I just want to know if all of these outlandish things are remotely true, if she really was such a vibrant character as they make out, or whether both her negative and positive qualities have been overplayed over the years. Yeah, I'd be really interested to find that out. Also, if we can count him as a historical figure, which I think we can because he's dead, I would love to spend a day with J.R.R. Tolkien, just because I want to talk about his books all day.
So do you have sort of, out of interest, any particular projects you're working on at the minute then?
Currently, while all the COVID-19 stuff is happening, it's pretty much grinding to a halt. I have got, I've just been, I don't know how much I can say actually. I have just been cast in an operetta in the summer. That's probably about all I can say, if it goes ahead.
I wish you all the very best in the future. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I'd just like to say thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much, Tom. It was really nice speaking to you. Thank you for inviting me onto here, and best of luck for the future.
I'd just like to say a big thank you to Jenni Simmonds. If you'd like any more information about how to contact her, she is on Spotlight, and you can also do so via her website, www.jennisimmonds.com.